Good evening. My name is Troy Gibson, and we also have Miss Melissa Faulk here. We will be presenting our thesis on gaining accounting certification across the world, a comparison of Hong Kong and Mexico certification standards. This is our abstract. Throughout time, there have always been requirements to gain valuable things. In this case, there are requirements to practice accounting under international boards for recognition. Accounting certifications allow for a degree of professionalism, prestige, and reliability among accountants. Below, the financial history, accounting certification requirements, and business practices of Hong Kong, Mexico, and the United States of America are analyzed. The greatness of developed Hong Kong and why Mexico is still a developing country are highlighted to accentuate the challenges to global convergence on international education standards. This is our introduction. The accounting profession serves the purpose of creating and sustaining a financial checks and balances system. Certifications hold the same titles but have different qualifications and requirements depending on where they are obtained, i.e. CPA. Various countries across the world have different accounting standards that affect the requirements and criteria to receive certifications. And in this presentation, we will take a look into differences in Hong Kong certification requirements and Mexico certification requirements. We will also analyze the global convergence efforts regarding certifications and similarities to the U.S.
Thank you, Troy. As you stated before, my name is Melissa Faulk, and first off, we're going to start by looking at the history of the economy within Hong Kong. So Hong Kong has had a long and rich history, but we're going to focus on the most recent history. So for the past 156 years, Hong Kong has been ruled by the British, and it was under a 99-year lease within those 156 years that officially ended in 1997. So Hong Kong's individual economy didn't officially start until 1997. So that's a pretty interesting fact that I found about Hong Kong. And after the lease, it is now known as a special administrative region of China. So Hong Kong is a melting pot of British and Chinese values. We can see a lot of the Chinese values prevalent in Hong Kong's economy, like family, honor, business integrity, and obedience to law. So one example of the family aspect is a lot of Hong Kong's industry is services, and within that is a lot of family-owned businesses, restaurants, and things like that that go through generations and serve to support the economy as a whole. And back to the Special Administrative Region of China, this was developed under an agreement called the Two Systems, One Country Agreement, which was a great decision from Hong Kong and mainland China, because after the 99-year lease was up from Britain, a lot of citizens were uncertain how the government, economic, and just daily aspects of life are going to change from the rule of Great Britain. And this agreement gave Hong Kong a sort of freedom to regulate its own government and economy, which has sprouted a pretty free run economy that has allowed for businesses to prosper and sprout up and continue, which we can see in how fast the economy has grown within the past 10 years.
So the history of the economy in Mexico. In 1847, there was the Mexican-American War. In this war, or previous to this war, Mexico owned California and everything up the western coast to where we now consider Seattle, or we now call Seattle. At the end of the war in 1847, the U.S. government gave Mexico $15 million for that land to not only stop the war, but also to help them out financially, because at that point in time, they were already dealing with financial issues with the economy. But the thing that happened in 1848 was the gold rush, the discoverance of gold. In that time, they discovered $100 million then of gold, and I wanted to highlight that because Mexico at this point in time were selling their resources rather than capitalizing on them and allowing the U.S. to do so. In the Mexican Revolution of 1910, the president by the name of Ruiz. He was over Mexico at that point in time, and he did not want to give up his rule. That created a civil war and also a revolution of try to get away from democracy because he was voted out by a electoral vote. At this point in time, they set them back in their economy because they were at war with each other. The oil crisis of the 1980s. Mexico at this point in time is still one of the leading oil exporters in the world. They had I guess you can say, fun time because the Shah of Iran and a lot of Middle Eastern countries tried to corner the market on oil. They wanted Russia and also Mexico to join them. They did not. They shut operations down with exporting oil during the 1980s. Now, at this point in time, Mexico and Russia were the only oil exporters in the world. So this allowed Mexico to not only capitalize on that, but also try to take out loans on future revenues. Now, one of the people that they were taking loans from at this point in time was the United States because they do so much business and they are so close to the United States. Also at this time, the United States was dealing with an inflation issue. So the financial systems and the rules of the financial system at this point in time, they put strains on the economy to try to stop the inflation. Now, this made banks increase their interest rates to try to make money back that they were losing now that inflation was going down. At this point in time, Mexico was the leading country taking loans from America, which increased interest rates on them. The Shah of Iran decided to start exporting oil again, which took away a lot of leverage that Mexico had. So now you have them not giving out so much oil, then they cannot also come up on revenue, which has also set them behind the ball, and also it made them lose a lot of money moving forward. Is why they're still a developing country at this point in time.
All right, so now that we know about the economies, we can look into the business practices and environment within Hong Kong and Mexico. So first we're going to look at Hong Kong. Hong Kong's major business practice is exported services. So their biggest market is exporting, and the biggest industries revolve around services. The main services of Hong Kong are financial services, which include a multitude of accounting services that we know here in America, accounting, auditing, traditional bookkeeping, and then tax, also consulting. So a lot of the big four and other international firms have taken advantage of this huge sector of financial services within Hong Kong, and it's really important for their businesses and the economy. Another service is tourism, which Hong Kong is such an attractive place for people to visit because of its, as we talked about before, the mix of English and Chinese culture is very interesting to see firsthand, which has really helped the development and prosperity within Hong Kong. And then the last service we'll go into is the trading and logistics services. This means basic supply chain services, which is easy to see from how most of their services are exported, and the goods that they produce and export are supported by the trades and logistics services. So Hong Kong's local business and accounting standards closely mimic the international financial reporting standards, and this makes the export market easy to navigate and regulate for both ends of the transaction and both parties in the transaction. So here we have a visual of two visuals, one of the four key industries within Hong Kong. Both of these are from the Hong Kong Trade and Development Council. So first we'll look at the four key industries. Like I stated previously, we have trading and logistics, 21%, financial services, about 20%, and then we have the other services, like I mentioned before, which is like the small businesses, restaurants, family-owned products, and things like that. So it's really great to see what a variety and individualized services that Hong Kong has. Then the next visual we have is the major export markets for services. So this is just showing us where these products and services are going. So number one, for about 40%, it's not surprising, it's mainland China. Then number two, the rest of the world, so just a big hodgepodge of everyone. But the most interesting is number three, which is the US. So we can see from this visual how important this relationship is and how important all of these countries are that go into their export market is for international accounting and regulation within this industry.
All right, so the business practices and environment of Mexico. Mexico at this point in time is the 15th largest economy in the world. They are still one of the largest exporters of oil. They have investments in high-tech industries, mineral exploitation, and manufacturing. A lot of what we see in America from agriculture comes from Mexico, whether it be our vegetables, anything that we have from the earth, most of it is coming from Mexico. As we know, the U.S. doesn't always grow all of its own properties or their own stock. When it comes to vegetables and other things of that nature, we get it from Mexico. Mexico also follows most business practices as the United States due to proximity and frequency of business relations. 80% of what Mexico makes comes from America. So we control 80% of their revenue and what they make in the world. So accounting certification requirements for the United States. The PCAOB assists with regulating accounting certifications. Several other boards assist with the requirements for the certifications as well. We have the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, which control the CPAs, the National Accountancy Association of State Boards of Accountancy, and then we also have the Institute of Management Accountants, which control the CMAs.
So the accounting certification requirements in Hong Kong greatly mimic the USA as well. While the US has the AICPA, Hong Kong has the Hong Kong Institute of Certified Public Accountants, which is the main accounting governing board for standard setting. Hong Kong has a multitude of other standard setting, interpretation, and guidance boards that I've listed below. Hong Kong standards are known to be fully converged with IFRS, excluding 3 small interpretations that aren't very material to this presentation. The Hong Kong International Certified Public Accountants is a member organization within the IFAC, and the close relation to IFRS allows for smooth translation and application for membership within Hong Kong.
So the accounting certification requirements in Mexico, standards are set by the Ministry of Education. The IMCP also stands for Instituto Mexicano de Contadores Públicos. They set the standards for public accountancy. They control all of the certifications that are needed by public companies and public accountants that work for those companies in Mexico. There are also several state level accounting organizations that individuals who do not have a bachelor's degree must join in order to practice accountancy.
So just based on the certification we just mentioned, some of the comparisons are very similar. They all require pretty much bachelor's degree at the least, and some specific requirements include the U.S. requires 150 credit hours to be eligible for the CPA exam.
Mexico only requires a bachelor's degree to practice. Unlike America and also Hong Kong, there's not so much of a set of tests that have to be made in order to get certification. They have to join these organizations in order to practice.
And then Hong Kong requires a bachelor's degree and then participation in a qualification program in order to sit for the CPA exam. All right, so now that we've looked at our 3 countries, their economy, history, and accounting requirements, we can see how global convergence of international accounting education standards is very important. So global convergence for enforcing international education standards are published by the International Accounting Education Standards Board, which is an organization under the International Federation of Accountants Commission, which is known as the IFAC. And this has been going on for many years. They've always had an emphasis on education within the IFAC, which is formerly known as the Education Committee before 2006. So the change from the Education Committee into the International Accounting Education Standards Board, the biggest difference was that the Education Board has substantial authority to enforce education standards upon the members, the member bodies under the IFAC. So
they actually emphasize the three E's. We have education, what are you learning? experience, what are you doing on the job, and also the examination of how good can you take a test with the information that you've been given, not only in the classroom, but also in the field. The IAESB serves to implement global education practices to ensure the maintenance of professionalism in accountants across the world.
So, as we know, global convergence can be very difficult. Some of the key impediments to global convergence are, not surprising, language and cultural differences. As we've seen throughout this PowerPoint, every country has immense cultural differences, and this can lead to difficulties within starting a standardized program that every country has to adopt. So more issues include levels of support. So just throwing out an example, Hong Kong and the US may have more of a support for this program and this implementation than Mexico. They might just put more effort towards it and have a whole nother standard setting body for it. So next one is time lags. This just means lags between different countries, the time zones. Like one might be waking up while the other one is going to sleep, and this is just hard for there to be effective and quick communication, which is needed if we're going to have global convergence. So next, the provision of resources. Just another quick example, a developed country might have more financial resources to implement programs and enforce programs than a developing country. So this is just a few things that can lead to difficulties within convergence. But now that we know some of the main impediments, we can understand why this hasn't happened yet. But while these stand in the way of complete convergence at the moment, the IFAC and other existing organizations do not believe efforts should be abandoned. So through hard work, communication, and collaboration, global convergence can be achieved, and that belief is enough to keep the efforts in place.
In conclusion, after looking deeply into the history and business practices that make up the economies of Hong Kong and Mexico, we can gather a clearer picture of their accounting practices and also the certifications in order to gain leverage, you can just say, in the accounting world. The U.S., Hong Kong, and Mexico all have prevalent accounting standards, certifications, and requirements for education, although they may differ slightly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.